Yo, how's it going everybody? It's Sketch and welcome back to the channel. And today we're looking at Arrow Flash, a horizontal shoot 'em up developed and published by Sega for the PAL and Japan regions and published by Renovation Products for the US region. This is one of those shoot 'em up games that isn't terribly difficult and can also serve as a good introduction to the genre for anybody that's not as familiar with this sort of game. The details vary slightly between regions, but only regarding the names of characters and such, so before suiting up for this one, let's check out the story. In the 30th century, a botched nether space experiment fires a magnetic pulse from the planet Earth, attracting the attention of the space Vikings led by the Great Halagi. His clan has been slapping planets across the galaxy, and now they've got Earth in their sights. The only defense left is Zanakeen and her prototype fighter, the ERX-75, also known as the Chameleon, a craft capable of morphing between a flying mech and a space fighter. You're the planet's last hope as you go forth and save Earth one laser at a time. Gameplay-wise, you've got a horizontal 2D shooter where you can switch your craft between a mech and a jet essentially, armed with several weapon upgrades and ship options for extra firepower. Picking up the energy shield will buy you 3 extra hits, but otherwise it's 1 hit and you're smoked. Your arrow flash, depending on form, will either fire a laser barrage or turn into a temporary supernova with the mech formation, which you can set to either charge over time or stack with bomb pickups. Throughout the game's 6 stages, the challenge ramps up fairly gradually. The first couple stages aren't pushovers, but give you plenty of time to figure out how everything works without throwing too much at you to start. Eventually, as you go on though, it does take the gloves off and throw waves of enemies and some pretty slick boss fights your way by stage 3, where it begins to get a little bit longer with stages being connected by section. Controls are fairly tight, though speed boost and keeping your power-ups will prove to be most beneficial considering your ship does well enough at a base, but the more firepower you got, the better off you'll be. Boss encounters also start out simple enough, but also get a little tricky towards the middle while still not getting too rough overall. Don't get me wrong, you can still get smoked by bosses and ads in this game super quick, but if you can avoid collisions and enemy fire, you'll be good more often than not. Graphics wise, it's got some pretty good stuff going on, especially with the opening cutscene, which is pretty dope and also about the standard you'll see in most Renovation games. Sprites are all fairly well drawn with some nice animations. Almost has a Gradius vibe to it at times with the style of the enemies and the level environments, which are also pretty colorful overall and have a good bit of parallax scrolling every so often. The bosses here too also got some pretty tight designs. Even though one repeats, they all look dope, especially the Mecha Dragon and the last handful of boss encounters on the back end of the game. The back end boss fights have a lot of moving parts and they'll definitely keep on your toes while having a solid aesthetic to them. Sound wise, this features a soundtrack by Hanayura Musume, which is pretty decent for the most part, and much like the gameplay, definitely ramps up as the game goes on. The tunes on the back end are also pretty tight, and the sound effects, while not quite as crunchy as a game like Thunder Force maybe, it does still have some pretty solid sound effects. Shots and explosions sound decent even though they're not really pushing the hardware. Altogether, the grooves coupled with the sound work out here pretty well in tandem. Overall, Arrow Flash is a decent place to start with shoot 'em up games for a beginner or a veteran alike, with its balanced challenge and solid gameplay. It's also got a soundtrack with a few catchy tunes that'll get stuck in your head too while you're at it. While they might not be quite on the same level as some of the upper echelon shoot 'em ups on the system, it's still definitely worth checking out for shoot 'em up fans. Arrow Flash gets a 7 out of 10, not bad whatsoever, but compared to other titles it sits comfortably in the middle. And also considering how many heavy shoot 'em up games the Genesis has in its library, this is not the worst place to be. This is a fun one to pick up every once in a while and play through every so often, especially once you get proficient at it, you'll be cruising through it in no time. And I thank you again for checking out this video. If you find these videos helpful, that's awesome. I'm glad to use it as a resource. Check back often, we'll have more reviews and video commentaries coming up in the near future. Until then, take it easy, stay safe out there, and I'll see you on the next one.